Our speaker today is Tom Baker, teacher of A Course in Miracles, professional counselor, and former Catholic priest. Speaking of A Course in Miracles, Tom holds a class on that subject every Sunday at 4:30 p.m. in the lobby of this building. You're welcome to attend that if you wish. I could have called it the narthex of the church if I wanted to get fancy, for those who like medieval architecture. Former Catholic priest is interesting. That shows that Tom has successfully transitioned from the largest church in the world to the smallest one. And from the most Christian church in the world to the most interfaith. But coming from the Catholic Church does have advantages. When he shares his insights, he can do so in English, Hebrew, Greek, or Latin. And maybe Aramaic if he's in a saucy mood. So please welcome our friend, our brother, our teacher, Tom Baker.
When I was a teenager, I asked a girl out for my first date. And my father, because I didn't have a driver's license, was going to have to drive me. And so he decided to sit down with me and give me a talk. And what he said was unusual. He said, "Tom, you have the wrong idea of this girl's body parts. You will be concentrating on body parts which will not help your date or help your relationship with this girl. I know what those body parts are that you're thinking about. And if you pursue that, it will be disastrous." He said, "Instead, I want you to look at her hair, her hands, her feet, and her eyes. Talk about those things. Talk about how beautiful her hair is, how you get lost in her eyes, how her hands are as delicate as the hands of a Greek statue, and her feet are simply lovely, especially her shoes. You will go everywhere with this girl." So the first date came along, and my father was in the front seat listening. And I adored this girl's hair, her eyes, her hands, and her feet.
Okay.
And she beamed at me like no girl I'd ever seen. It was amazing.
Oh.
Now, I was concentrating, even then, with my father's advice, on what I call the who of the person. That is, what we are in our bodies. There's the who and the what. There's the higher self, the part of me that's one with God, the part of my mind and heart that's one with God. That's the what. And then there's the who. There's the Tom Baker. Now, Tom Baker, the what in Tom Baker is the child of God. The who in Tom Baker is Tom. In spirit, it's just the opposite. You think about the Tom. In spirit, we think about the what, which is the child of God. We each have both of those things here on earth, the who and the what. Now, in spirit, when we go over there, The what is that which is emphasized, not the who. The who is just a little whisper in my being. Tom here is the big deal. That's who I was introduced as. The child of God, though, is what I really am. And that's what you are too. There's Carol, child of God. There's Marilyn, child of God, who comes from a family of Mattinglys. No? Yes. Did you know I knew the Mattinglys in Louisville? In my parish, there were Mattinglys and Bradshaws. The Mattinglys worked hard for a living, and the Bradshaws drank all the time. When you married a Bradshaw, you knew what you were getting. Good times, but some hard times. When you married a Mattingly, you knew what you were getting. Hard-working people. People who would get you somewhere. Well, on Valentine's Day, which was last Wednesday, my wife told me that I was the only one in the world for her. Isn't that nice? Oh, boy. Oh. It made me remember a time before we were married. It was Easter, and I had spoken at the Easter conference at the ARE. The Tom part of me was in the ascendant. I felt like a local celebrity and a bit superior to everyone else, including my girlfriend, Kathy. Now, lots of young ladies were looking my way, smiling and telling me that I was amazing. I sort of felt worshipped. Now, being worshipped is a very heady experience. That's why everybody wants to be a celebrity, so they can be worshipped. So I was inflated like a big red balloon floating against the ceiling. And Kathy, she was simply one of my worshipers. I was having a male fantasy, the Hugh Hefner of spirituality. Then Kathy and I took a walk on the beach after dark. And I told Kathy that I was newly out of the priesthood, which she knew, and had decided about an hour ago that I needed to play the field. Now, Kathy, who has always told me the truth, said, "Well, Tom, you want to sow your seed in the fertile ground of the women of Virginia Beach." I was just about to reply when a cloud came across the moon. Now, at Easter, we always have a full moon. I don't know if you knew that. We always do. So there was a lot of light from the moon, but when this cloud came across the moon, it created absolute pitch black darkness. And out of the darkness, Kathy spoke again, and she said, "Whoever you become, I will always be your friend." Then I heard a voice in my head that said, "Listen, stupid." That was God. The what in me had spoken. Then the moon came out, and in the silver light, Kathy smiled at me. My balloon lost its hot air, and I landed back on Earth in the arms of my future wife. It wasn't that nice. Now, let's go back to my childhood to see how the who and the what in me was treated by my parents. I'm a therapist, a psychotherapist, and I do a lot of what's called cognitive behavioral therapy. In cognitive behavioral therapy, you discover the core beliefs about yourself that decide how you interact with people, the world, and yourself. And I often use this in therapy, and today I will use it on myself. My mother encouraged the what in me.
Okay.
She said, Tom, you will be an extraordinary person. You already are an extraordinary person. And no matter what you do, you will do in an extraordinary way. My father, on the other hand, who had been an orphan and brought up by his grandmother, who didn't want him, told me that I would never amount to anything, like he thought he hadn't amounted to anything. So in effect, my mother said that the what in me would always shine through the who in me, which my father said would not amount to anything. So I have two core beliefs about myself. One is that I'm an extraordinary person. Ta-da! The other belief I have is that, well, I will never amount to anything. Now, that sets up a neurotic conflict in my mind. Okay? I'm extraordinary, but nobody notices. That's why when I was introduced, I wanted to just go up and hug and kiss Lloyd. Lloyd would not stand for that kind of thing, I'm sure. But this is the conflict I live with. Yet the neurosis had a good effect on me as well. I became fascinated by my soul and skeptical of my partial manifestation as Tom. Tom is a strutting peacock with artistic feathers. But when I get rained on, I'm just a scrawny little chicken. So Tom is inconsistent. Sometimes he's a Broadway show, sometimes he's a little backyard production. But the child of God comes out when I remember my mother and my wife, and when I love someone. Now, we all want to know what's the most important thing in the world. We also want to know what's the most important thing about us. I mean, if you think about it, what's the major reality that we deal with all the time? And I mean reality, I don't mean circumstances. Now, I've conducted a lot of funerals in my life, and I've heard what people say about the deceased. Because everybody comes up in funerals, they have for the last 50 years. They come up to funerals, they go to funerals, and they come up front and they talk about the deceased. The best thing to hear about a person is not that they were rich or successful, lucky in love or fortunate in business. Not that they were handsome or beautiful, not even that they were skillful or even friendly. The golden thing that is said about the deceased is that they believe in me. That's what people want. They want you to believe in them. When there was no reason to, they believed in me. Even when I did wrong or disgraced myself, they believed in me. In other words, they saw my soul, my spirit, my essence. They went beyond my hair, which there is very little of anymore. People never fall in love with my hair anymore. They went beyond my hands and my feet and my eyes. They believed in me. They saw me for the shining star that I could not see, or they believed in me when I had stopped believing in myself. That's what you want to be in the world, I think. A believer in someone. That's what Jesus did and does for us. He believes in us. Now, it's a funny thing about Christianity. We spent over 2,000 years believing in Jesus, arguing over who Jesus is, whether he is God or human or a little bit of both. How was he born? What did he do? How did he die? Did he rise on Easter? And if so, was he a ghost or a god? That's been our preoccupation. The details of Jesus. We have fought wars over what Jesus was. We're on the verge of a cultural war. We're having a cultural war now about who believes in Jesus and who's not believing in Jesus and who is Jesus for you and all that crap. It's awful. Yet all this time, Jesus has been believing in us, reminding us that we are a little bit human and a whole lot God. That we are love itself. He's called us to a resurrected life rather than a crucified life. That's the revolution that Jesus led, that we might believe in one another the way he believes in us. And all we need to do is take that down to other people and believe in them the way they have never believed in them. That's it, I think. That's the secret to a good life. I appreciate your attention.